Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening for the Physician Leadership Course Informational webinar. Just a little Zoom housekeeping. This is a professional environment. We ask everyone remain respectful to all participants. This webinar is being recorded and will be published for others to view at a later time. You can see and hear us, however, we cannot see or hear you, so please keep that in mind throughout the webinar. This webinar is best accessed through a computer. Please utilize the Q&A function at the bottom bar of your screen to submit questions throughout the webinar, and then the best viewing option is to fit it to window. I'm your moderator, Blaine King of the Arizona Medical Association, and joining me this evening is Dr. Edward Walker from the University of Washington and the Washington State Medical Association Center for Leadership Development, as well as Monica Salgankar of the Washington State Medical Association. They're going to share with us all of the details you'd like to know about the upcoming physician leadership course. So guys, take it away.
Okay. Thanks very much, Blaine. It's a delight to be here tonight. And I understand we have about an hour. Is that the predicted length of the webinar? So, and if we finish early, we finish early, but I want to make sure that all your questions are answered. So my job tonight is to give you more information about a remarkable educational opportunity that's been running now for more than 10 years in Washington State. And it's a leadership development process that we started when I was still the chief medical officer at the University of Washington Medical Center. My background is in psychiatry, and I went through a number of leadership positions during my training, including being chief of psychiatry and having just more and more administrative responsibility as I matured in the system. And the thing that got to me pretty early on was I was astounded how little opportunity there was to learn about how to be a leader. And so over the course of my development within the University of Washington, I gradually accumulated experiences and training that made me want to do more training myself. And I got a master's in health administration from the University of Washington, and then went on to be on the faculty of the MHA program here in Seattle. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is how that all turned out, because I used what I learned to build a very important series of courses in the State Medical Association in our Center for Leadership Development, where I'm the senior medical advisor. And before we start, I'm going to introduce my partner, Monica Salgankar. And Monica is the person who's the project manager for the center, a program manager, and she has a lot of good things to tell us too about how the course is developed and how we might be able to help you. Let me continue by sharing my screen, because I have a lot of this very well organized to talk with you about, and well, it'll be a little bit easier if I do it that way. So Monica, can you see the screen okay? Okay, good. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is how did this course that we're interested in working with you come about? And we're going to talk a little bit about the case for physician leadership and why is it important for physicians in regional areas to step up to get this kind of training because of the return on investment for their systems. We're going to look at this course in detail and why it's different in the way it's put together than many of the existing courses in the country. We're going to look at whether or not it makes any difference in physician effectiveness and satisfaction with their care. And can this much online learning be enjoyable and productive? I mean, we're now 2+ years into COVID. People are tired of Zoom. This is an online experience. How could that be fun? How could that be worth anything? I want to try to convince you that online learning actually can be very well done. It all depends on how it's set up. I'll tell you a little bit about the modalities that we're going to use, but this is 21st century education, very different than a lot of the sage on the stage, sit in your chair kind of stuff we had in medical school. And I'm going to share some of the reviews we've had. I think this course has been well appreciated by our regional physicians in Washington State and the Pacific Northwest. And then we're going to spend some time thinking about what questions you might have. So let me start with, I think, the most important thing, that this is not just going to be a series of Zoom meetings. I think that online learning is simply a way of delivering content. I've been in live sessions that have been terrible, and I've been on online meetings that have been just terrific. And it all depends on how you. It's the creativity of the instructor. It's the level of support that you get from the behind the scenes people like Monica. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've optimized the course to work even during this crazy COVID environment that we're all living through. And by the way, I want to acknowledge COVID, at least in the Northwest, and I'm sure it's no different down in your neighborhood. We're at a kind of peak pucker right now, and I'm so glad that so many of you have been able to take some time this evening at the end of very busy, complicated days to learn a little bit more about this course. And I want to say from a standpoint of, we're not a company that's selling courses around the country. We're in Arizona because the director of the Washington State Medical Association is a friend of the director of the Arizona State Medical Association, and we've been invited to come down and offer this purely on that relationship. We're not going around trying to make money. So this is really, I think, sharing what I think is the best of medicine. When you find something working, let's get it out and let's get it around. Now, in order to be part of this, I want to show you one of the technologies we use a lot. And if you take out your cell phone and just take your camera and aim it at this QR code here, there is a technique we use when we're in the classroom to poll people, and we're going to use it just to demonstrate it. So what I want you to do now is just, if you want to participate, and I advise you, it's a lot of fun to do, just aim your camera at this and then just follow the instructions. And it should take you to a place called WSMA Poll 586. And all you have to do is just sign in. And we'll come back to this later if you need it. So how did this all come about? Like I think I told you, when I was CMO, we were struggling to try to find ways of getting our medical staff to be more engaged in what we were doing. And I started building courses back in maybe 2003 or so, just after I graduated from the master's program in health administration. And when we wanted to put this course together, I got a course committee together, a group of physicians from the State Medical Association. And we said, like, what are the main things we should do? And they told me, number one, you should have a general introduction to leadership as the first course. So you might think of when we were back in college, we had a history of the world 101. You know, you spent 2 days on France and England, 2 days on Italy, 2 days on Persia. And the idea was you were just getting a very superficial, inch deep, mile wide overview. So this course is one of those intro courses that shows you pretty much everything that leaders have to think about, or most things that leaders have to think about, without making you an expert in any one of them, but leaving open the door to getting that expertise at a later time. They also said, let's have evidence-based content. I mean, we're used to that as physicians, and there are no p-values in administration, but what we can do is we can look at where have we proven methods of change management and personal behavior modification and leadership that have been shown to be effective over and over again. We also built this on a competency system. I'm going to show you a little bit later that Monica and I are both graduates of the UW Masters in Health Administration. When we got trained, our program was accredited with a health leadership competency system, and the curriculum was derived from that competency system. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, because what I've done with this course is I've used the same competency system. The idea is, what are the things that people really should learn? Because a lot of physicians, I think, make the mistake of being attracted to what I call leadership bright, shiny objects. One of them is finance. That a lot of physicians tell me, oh, if I only had a finance course, I'd be a great leader. And they find out, they take the finance course and they know nothing more about leadership except how to run a spreadsheet. And the key here is, what are the true leadership behaviors that make you the kind of leader that people would want to follow? Fourth thing they said was, hey, we're busy. Don't give us a lot of work. So what we decided to do was to try to figure out, how could we do, for instance, the online portion with no more than 2 hours a week time. So the way, as you'll see in a minute, it's a bookends course. We get together in person for 2 days to do the stuff where we really have to be facing each other. You know, things about running teams, changing culture, influencing physicians. You learn that best by actually doing it. And so There's contact time on the first 2 days, and then we have a long stretch of about 9 weeks where we have time together online. And there's some things that you can learn quite well online in a team, things like strategic planning and quality improvement, patient safety. And each of you take turn, you're on a team, and each of you take turn leading the team and attacking each of these topics. And I'll show you the topics in just a minute. And then we have a final day where we get together and do some of the really hard stuff that can only be done in person. Things like conflict management, negotiation, giving meaningful feedback to people, and trying to influence people that really don't want to be influenced. And so it's done in a very economically conserved time. We also use a Goldilocks principle, that not too little, not too much. So there's enough meat here that pretty much after every time you have an interaction with the course, the next day you can take something home and try it and have it be effective in your clinic or in your ward. We also use state-of-the-art education techniques. That this is not going to be a series of lectures. There's no death by PowerPoint. It's entirely interactive, where you go in and out of small groups. And I usually set a goal for you to accomplish something, give you some tools, and then ask you, what did you accomplish? So it's kind of like the way we learn best as physicians. Give us a problem, give us some tools, give us some resources that we can consult, and we'll come up with an answer. So, and we're seeing that this group said we want both in-person and online delivery, because some things are best done online, where the classroom is a waste of your time. Some things are best done in person, because you really have to be there to do it. And when I say online, I mean by yourselves in the team. And when I say in person, I mean the kind of thing we're doing now. And finally, they said, I thought this was the funniest, it has to be taught by someone who's run something larger than a meeting, i.e., don't give us someone who's an academic who's going to talk about leadership. Give us someone who's actually led an organization. And I've stepped up to that, because I've got lots of war stories to share with you guys. And there's always 3 groups of physicians in the course. There's one group, and I think most of you probably are in this group, that, you're currently like a clinic medical director and you're getting swamped. Someone asked you to do this and you just don't know how to do it. And the course is mostly aimed at that group. But there's a few people who are taking it as a forward-looking investment. Some people are raising young kids right now, and they're preparing to get back into the clinic in a while, and they want to be prepared, and they want to make it different. They feel motivated to make the system work better, and they want to start gearing up while they're part-time. And they wouldn't accept a leadership role right now, but they would maybe 2 or 4 years from now. And then there's another group, which is very small, but there's some people who know right from the get-go, hey, I want to be a chief medical officer, get out of my way. And we use the course can be useful for all 3 of these groups, and everybody can get out of it what they need and want. So the course objectives, as I've kind of give you an overview of this, it's a bookend. So on the left, you see the 2 days of in-person, and you can see the types of objectives that we try to cover. And then you can see the last day also in person, which is also kind of the stuff that can only be done when you're sitting across from someone. But then the online weeks are 9 modules, each of which has a goal. There are some resources, and your team, which you're assigned to on the first week, and you stay with for the entire course. It's usually a team of about 6 people. You journey together, taking turns being leaders and solving the problems. So for instance, how do you deal with error in your clinic, and how do you reduce error? How do you disclose when you've made a mistake, and what do you do with the person that's made the mistake? What's the just culture construct? And all of this stuff gets explored very systematically over the 10 weeks of the course. So the content has actually grown over the past 15 years while the course has developed. Believe it or not, we're always amazed at this, but we've had almost over 1,500 physicians take the course locally, and I also teach for a friend at Piedmont Healthcare in Atlanta. And again, I only did that because I was invited in. I didn't really seek out any of that extra work. We've had about 50 iterations of the course now. So every time we do it, great suggestions are made, and they appear in the next iteration of the course. It's a very dynamic, continually evolving course. The focus is on your learning, not my teaching. There's very little death by PowerPoint. In fact, there's none. I don't believe in driving you crazy with content. It's basically, what do you need to solve the problem, and then let's get on with it together. We've had remarkably uniform ratings that have been always positive. It's rare for us not to get 5 out of 5 on the satisfaction with the course. And what's very interesting was when I look around in our region, a significant number of our really successful local leaders have something like this course or an equivalent. But I'm always happy to see many of our graduates moving up the ranks. Here's a typical day. We have 4 hours in the morning for the in-person, and 4 hours in the afternoon, and with a break in between. It breaks up the morning. But you'll see in a minute, I'm going to show you the inside of the course. You can actually see how the time is spent. It goes by very quickly. I mean, people have always told me they're surprised how quickly these blocks blow by, and they're often wanting to do more, and I have to shut down the groups or shut down the process because people really get engaged. So part of the way this came together was we started thinking about what's the problem we need to solve? Why do physicians have to get leadership training? And one of the problems is that, I don't know if you know about Michael Porter. He's one of the great gurus at Harvard about strategic planning and defining healthcare. And this book came out, I think, in 2010. It became a Bible for most of us that were studying back at that time. And what I loved about the synthesis that he and Elizabeth Cheesberg did for JAMA, it was like, if we don't have the physicians step up, we're going to have a problem, because improving the value of healthcare, only physicians can do. We could work with administrators, but physicians walk the talk. They live the life. And so they have to get there. And the problem is, if we don't step up, we're going to have a problem where the administrators, not being able to partner with us, are going to take over and do their best without us. And we don't want that. We tried that back in the 1980s. It was called managed care. And managed care really didn't work very well. We need to be involved. And so the problem that we have is we want physicians and administrators to work together. It's actually easier for us to learn their world and their language than it is for them to learn our world and our language, because what we have accomplished as physicians is by an order of magnitude more complex and time intensive. So we have to kind of meet them over on their world, try to figure out how to build those bonds and build those strong dyadic partnerships. Now, we know a lot about medical leadership because it's been studied over the last 10 years quite well. We know that the old days, we would pick a medical leader. We'd say, who's the best surgeon? Who's the best internist? And we got what we got, because being a really good doctor doesn't mean you're a good leader. And so what happened was, because of that, we had little formal leadership training, and people just kind of did their best. And we did the see one, do one, teach one in leadership, just like we learned everything else. And so the problem is that we're basically competitive, independent thinkers. So what works so well for you in the emergency room, where you're not afraid of anything coming in because you have the confidence to take on whatever comes, that is not actually the way leadership works. Leadership is much more of a team sport. It's a little bit more reflective, and it's a little bit more careful in weighing the full set of possibilities. And so confidence in leadership comes from seasoning and cooperation and teamwork, rather than the personal grit that works so well when we're talking about something like clinical care. So the problem has been, though, that many of our physicians have lacked the desire to lead. It's kind of like, let everybody else figure this out. I just want to see my patients. And the problem is that led us to be highly individualistic and not working in teams. But the problem with that is that when you're working with another physician, that physician is much more likely to be influenced by you because of your identity as a physician than, say, taking advice from a non-physician. And so, just being realistic, we've learned the hard way that by training up physicians to be the influencers and the drivers of quality improvement, the drivers of directionality in improvement of healthcare, we get further. In fact, many of the best systems now have presidents, CEOs, or board chairs who are physicians, who are leading the strategic push that's so necessary. And I'll just say, it makes a difference. I don't want to go through this whole literature, but basically everything gets better when you really get a good physician at the helm, because all of the dimensions of quality improve simply because we have a better perspective on which to base our judgment. And if we get properly trained, we do better. And then the problem is that being a physician doesn't make the quality better. Being a trained physician is what makes the quality better. So what's interesting is I spent the first 20 years of my career in doing a lot of the stuff that you'd expect a medical center academic to do. I did research, clinical care. I taught in the med school, and my students were residents and medical students. And the last 15 years, though, I spent as a faculty member in the MHA program, the Masters in Health Administration. So I had wonderful up-and-coming clinicians, clinical managers like Monica, who had the same passion that I saw in our medical students and our residents, but they wanted to do it from a non-medical perspective. They wanted to come in as administrators. And what I found was when they went out to get jobs, there was a clear progression that happened. You know, they always had a passion just like we did, and then they would work their way up. You know, they would start with jobs that were relatively low in the power structure, like being an assistant manager in a clinic, and they would get mentored over years. And these are quotes that I got from interviews that I've done over the years as I've coached people. And it is very clear that it would take a decade of time for these people to season enough to become senior hospital leaders, non-clinical hospital leaders. But it was very clear that they were mentored into that position. Physicians have a very different pathway. You know, what often happens is if I ask people, how did you become a physician leader? These are the kind of answers I got. And it's all about, well, things weren't working, so I decided to pitch in. Or someone asked me to do it. Or someone told me I needed to do it. Or the best one, I missed a meeting. I mean, that happens actually pretty frequently, that people end up actually not wanting to do this, but they weren't at the meeting, so everybody stepped back and they were still standing in line. So let's talk about what it's been like for you as you've thought about this physician leadership stuff. I'm sure you wouldn't be here tonight if you weren't thinking about this at some level. And here's where I want you to use that survey that I talked about. So some of you are ahead of me already. Good, you're forward thinkers. And so the question here is, the person to whom I report is an accomplished and effective leader who provides excellent mentorship. And this is pretty typical. It's all over the place. You know, some of you are in situations where, as you're trying to lead, I'm making a guess that many of you have already tried or have been asked to take a role like this. And what we're doing now is trying to give you a chance to decide, am I getting mentored properly for this? And look at the variability here. How about this next one? I feel like I'm part of a competent leadership team. What do you think about that? Let me put up the QR code again in case you haven't. If you were confused about participating, just aim your phone, your picture, your camera at this QR code, and it will take you to the poll, and it will let you push some buttons. All you got to do, the camera knows exactly what it needs to do. You just got to trust the camera here. There we go. So this is good. 2/3 of you are part of half are part of a competent team. Some of you disagree. For some of you, you're not sure. Yeah, that's often what happens. This is one of the tools we use in the course because it gives us the opportunity. We can have more focused discussions quickly because I can survey very quickly where people are and what's going on. Let me ask you about this. When someone gives me responsibility for an outcome as a leader, I'm also given the necessary resources and authority to achieve it. And this is a tough question. My guess is most of you are going to be in the lower half of this diagram, because I think what happens a lot in hospitals is we say, you know, Dr. Blaine, we want you to do this. And then when you say, well, do I have any resources? Am I going to get paid? The answer is no, you just need to do this. And that's the problem. So, and this is one of the things that we address in the course, because this is one of the reasons that many people don't want to be leaders in their health systems, because the health systems have not set up the leadership roles properly so they actually can get the outcomes that they're trying to achieve. And so look at this. No one here is agreeing that they're getting the kind of support that they need to be the leaders that they're being asked to be. And that's kind of unfortunate. What about this? My organization is making a strong commitment to leadership development. The neutral here means I'm not sure. And neutral is actually, in this case, a little on the negative side, because if you're not an A or a B, it means your organization probably isn't. Because generally, my experience is if your organization is committed to leadership, they're going to be asking you about it. They're going to be inviting you in. So I think 2/3 of you are effectively saying, my organization is at least silent about this, if not, maybe not negative, maybe they're not trying to dissuade us, but they're not inviting us in. And that's, again, that's sadly pretty typical of what we normally see. Now, before you rush into this one, I'm going to ask you what word best describes your current leadership situation. If you want to use more than one word, you see how I say multiple words use dashes? Put dashes. Like if you want to say not too good, you go not dash too dash good, so that the words stay together. But let's see what you say. What word or group of words with dashes best describes your current leadership situation? I'm not a leader. I guess that's what that means. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we usually discover is that some of you are in situations where you're being taken care of, and you just need to learn more. You just need to kind of sharpen your skills. Some of you are not being led. You're being asked to lead things, but no one is really giving you the handhold. There's no equivalent of a senior resident to talk to. Sometimes I've seen people who are facing silence, that they don't know what the response is. It's neither positive and affirming, nor is it putting their leadership in jeopardy. It's just that nothing, there's like missing in action approaches. So, okay, again, this is pretty typical. Let me ask you if you feel burned out. And this is important because my wish for you that would be that all of you are in A, and if you're in the A group, what's happening is you have figured out a way to run your life as a physician in a system that respects what you do and gives you the resources that you need to be fully capable in your leadership, and you feel competent, because when the system supports the physicians who are the leaders, you get good results. And the sad part is that often that's not really what's happening. That and I think some organizations are better at doing this than others, but yeah, I think this kind of speaks for itself. So here's the problem. The reason I asked you about this is our medical care system is really kind of not a system. I mean, I'd like to think of it as a broken system, that basically it's actually designed to produce burden, that we haven't really set it up to pace medical care so that physicians, nurses, our whole team, and our patients have balanced competing values, where the support system is there to use every one of the team members at the highest and best use. And so when the burnout starts setting in because the system is not set up right. The problem is, do you take responsibility for that? I mean, how many of you are tired of being told that you need to be more resilient, that you need to, just buck up and take care of yourself better and use mindfulness and yoga and stuff like that? I think that there are some people that need that self-regulation, but I think the majority of the people that I have coached over the years are quite resilient and quite resourceful. But the problem is they're in a system that's not letting them do the kind of care that they feel they need to do. So you can retire or see a therapist, or you can step up and lead. That's the way I see it. And so the course is really about that lower right-hand box, which is, if you want to change the system, if you want to make it different, you have to learn how to do it. You have to play at the level that the system is designed. And after 40 years of doing this, it's very clear to me that it takes a good bit of training. In fact, I would say, when I look back, it's almost the volume of material that I learned in my residency, that you have to be dedicated to trying to do your A game. There's a lot of things to learn. There's a lot of maneuvers, but you have to start somewhere, and you don't have to be an expert. Not everybody needs to be a CMO, but even the people who are running clinics as medical directors have to be able to have a core group of skills, and that training is what's built into this course. So in another world, what we would have done is had a breakout session now, and we can't do that on the webinar. We sometimes do it in the Zoom meetings, but the software is designed. This is to remind me to tell you that we often will take a question like this and take the group and put you in a room with 5 other physicians and say, look, prioritize what you think has to happen, and after 10 minutes, come back and tell us what you think is going on, and we have a plenary session. What I love about Zoom is the class is small enough, we can see each other on the screen, we can interact as if we were in one room, and still have the intimacy of team conversations like this, or dyadic conversations. Maybe this is a conversation that 2 people would have together, but the technology is actually pretty good to make that happen. So we can't do that as a breakout, but let's do it with the word cloud here. So again, using the words with dashes or words, what do you think you are missing right now to be a successful medical leader? What's the stuff that is keeping you from taking charge in your clinic and moving ahead and transforming your system? I'll address these as they're coming up. So the opportunity thing actually is something under your control, that sometimes you can surprise an administrator by actually coming and saying, hey, I want to take over the leadership of this clinic. The time and work-life balance stuff is a very important thing, because I found that I actually was able to achieve better work-life balance as a leader than I was as a follower. That once I took over the system and was able to reorganize the clinic, for instance, and think through what are the ways that we could do things different, by, instead of having one leader at the top tell us what to do, by using the group, the wisdom of the crowd, and getting people together, that often improved the work-life balance. Confidence and knowledge simply comes from time in the seat. I think I feel very competent as a leader at this point, but when I was at the early stages, when I was at the clinic medical director level, it was pretty difficult. So yeah. The fear of loss of income depends on what kind of system that you're in. And here, one of the most important principles is leadership should be compensated. One of the things that we'll talk about in the course is, if you're giving over part of your day and you're missing out on clinical income, and the system is benefiting from that, there has to be some skin in the game for the system as well as you. And we could talk about that in the course, but I've always recommended that people not be put on stipends, but be put on actual FTEs, where they have protected time to do the leadership. So it isn't just citizenship work, although all of us should be doing a little bit of that as part of our contribution, like, helping with credentialing and stuff like that. But the most important thing is to be able to know that your work is appreciated, both in terms of what you're doing and how you're compensated for it. The confidence, I think, comes over time. And I think confidence, just like, think about being a first year intern, you're not very confident, and it takes several years of your residency and then several years of seasoning after that to get true confidence. But it just takes a while. It just takes a while. Okay. And, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, and that's what this course really is. So remember, I told you before that that one of the things that the course committee recommended, which we agreed with, was let's do a competency-based system. So when Monica and I graduated from the MHA program, one of the things that we had been exposed to was a curriculum that was informed by the accreditation agency of the MHA programs nationally. And they had this thing called the National Center for Healthcare Leadership Competency Model. And basically their model was that healthcare leadership is driven by three basic forces: transformation of healthcare, care for people, and getting things done, execution. And then under those three major headings in this ballantine, you see the types of things. And I want to go through them a little bit in detail, because I think our course is determined by this competency model. And the content that we go through actually touches each of these competency elements, because it's actually a microcosm of the MHA program itself. So there's things like analytical thinking. You can rightly say, well, yeah, I know how to do that. I'm a doctor. Well, you're talking about clinical analytic thinking, but there's also business analytical thinking. And we try to think about what are the things that you didn't get to learn in medical school, or things that you learned differently when you were in residency, and to figure out. When most physicians look at this list, they go right down to the 5 o'clock position. They go, oh yeah, finance skills. What's interesting is you don't need to know all that much about finance. Finance is something which is a business function, which is owned by your dyad partner. So when you're a medical director of a clinic, the clinic business manager is a black belt in finance skills. You don't need to learn that. All you need to know is to listen to your partner. And so you need to know enough to have conversations. It's much more important for you as a physician leader to be able to think of strategy. What's the clinical strategy for where our clinic is going? What are the innovations in clinical care? How do we get the right information to make good decisions as leaders? And how do we organize people around that? For execution, some of this stuff, we don't have to teach very, very long. Who here on a regular basis leaves the hospital without finishing your notes, or by the end of the night, writing them? The idea here is some of these things we're actually quite good at as physicians, but communication skills. Well, we have good clinical communication skills, but we sometimes lack other types of communication skills, like impact and influence is another example, where I'm not always sure, or I wasn't when I was younger in my years, that I had the best way of approaching other physicians to try to get them to do things. So we practice how you get physicians to be influenced by leadership and to move in the same direction. In fact, the influence process is actually bidirectional, because it's not about telling them what to do, but asking them what they think their goals are, where we should go together, and how I can facilitate as a leader a path to that destination. And there's other things here like project management, putting up buildings and stuff like that. That's where our partners shine. So, but we actually touch all of these things in some way during the course. I think the biggest thing that we do in the course is think better about managing people, because leadership really ultimately is people management. And this is one of the things where I think this course is dramatically different than other leadership courses. I've seen things from Harvard and Yale on leadership, and they're very heavy into strategic planning, finance, and things that your business partner is actually already better than you at. Why try to master that? Physicians need to be able to build teams, to be interpersonally good listeners, to be able to develop physician talent within their ranks, to generate and develop self-confidence, to build relationships. When you have the ability to do the things on this slide, that's 50% of the journey to being a really good leader. Leaders ask a lot of questions, and the best leaders ask 10 questions for every statement that they make, because it's not about telling people what to do. It's about asking them about what's happening, where they are, where they want to go, and how you could help them. And we get into that in a major way in the course. So like I mentioned before, it's not the thing on the left, and most of you probably went through that during medical school. And it's much more of a team-based, interactive, problem-oriented kind of approach that you see on the right here. So we use a constructivist philosophy, which is basically what physicians do best as adults, is Malcolm Knowles' adult education process, which is give me a problem, give me some materials, show me a path forward, then get out of my way, let me fix it. And that's what team-based learning is all about. So for the online portion, the way this works is you can imagine what the in-person thing is, I think, pretty easily. You know, we get together and we're doing kind of like what we're doing now, except you're doing more of the work. But on the online portion, what we do is we have 10 weeks that go from Friday to Friday. And the reason we do that is we want to put the weekend in the front, because most of the physicians have told us that's when I have most of my time to do stuff on the weekend. And we have about 2 hours of time for each of these weeks. And people usually spend about 1 hour of that time just going through some very simple readings. And I'll show you in a minute what the course looks like, the syllabus. And then we start conversations. And the course is set up so you have an online conversation. And it's asynchronous, because some people will post on a Monday morning. They'll make a statement of, here's what I think the problem is, here's what I'd like to do about it. Someone else comes in Monday night, amplifies that. Someone else checks in Tuesday morning, amplifies it further. So by Thursday, the group has actually been able to make a decision. You can also do this as a group. You know, if your team is set up, the 6 of you want to get together Tuesday night at 7:30, because that works best, you can do that too. So there's lots of ways to skin this cat. Importantly, each week there's a different topic during the 10 weeks, and each of you get a turn more than once to be the leader of the group. And it is a leadership development course, and that's a very important part of this. So let me show you a little bit about the website. I'm going to have to stop my share and then go to the course website, and I'll redo my share. Just a moment. Okay. So you should see what the course looks like now. Monica, can you see it clearly? All right. Monica's my producer. She sits in the control room and makes sure I do everything right. So basically, this is what you would see. This is the leadership course. This is the one that's going on. We met last Friday and Saturday, and we've got a group of about 25 physicians that are doing this right now. And you can see they're busy in their team forums already. We have 5 teams rather, that are working through a lot of their stuff. And so the first week we spend time. It's interesting. It's like those Matryoshka dolls where one is inside the other. You just keep opening a doll, there's a smaller one inside. The course is like that. We start at the very core, which is about you and the things around being aware of your own personal leadership style, your own emotional intelligence. And then we move from there to dyads and teams and organizations. So we pick a process that allows us to work from the inside out. So you get your own house in order first, and then think about, how do I deal with one other person, groups of people, and then groups of groups. And you can see wherever it says class, it'll open up a PowerPoint that has information, some of which we use during the class. If it says read, it's a PDF, and if it says watch, it's a video and all these are short PDFs, short videos. I think most of the videos are under 5 minutes in length in general. We spend time doing coaching, and then here's the first week. So these are the 2 days here. Module 1 and 2 are the 2 in-person days, usually a Friday, Saturday. For you guys, I think it's midweek. Here's the first online module. So we open it up, and there's a goal. We're going to learn about continuous quality improvement, and here are the objectives. And here the task for this week is the group is given some resources, and they're told to improve hand sanitization on a ward or a clinic. And the idea is, if it's 60%, what do you need to do to bring it up to closer to 100%? So people then go back to the resources. So they have all of these videos to watch, and then they set about that process of working together as a team to figure out how to solve the problem. And people are surprisingly happy the way this works out. You know, that by the end of the week, they've usually solved the problem. It feels satisfying, and people have made some progress, and they've learned the objectives. The following week is about patient safety. Same kind of thing. We learn root cause analyses and how to apply them. The week after that, how do you disclose error? And when you've disclosed an error, what do you do with the person who's made the error? Lots of videos of people trying to do this, and we think about how they're doing and how we would improve on what they're doing. We look at personal planning, learn about email management and time management and things that are driving you crazy as a leader, because you're taking on a lot more responsibility. And we actually ask people to think about burnout and to build an email management strategy that will help them work their time better. The next week is about long range and strategic planning. Why do they invite people like us as physicians to think about the future? It's because the future is changing. The present's changing into the future. We want to be part of it. There's a little primer on budgets, which is just a toe in the water. Remember, each of these are an inch deep and a mile wide. The idea is we're just giving you general principles. We look about how you get other physicians to change. What are the ways in which physicians are much more likely to involve themselves in quality improvement? How do you invite them in and keep them engaged? Then we have a module on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not all about a white man's paternal system anymore. That medicine is a team sport with lots of people from very, very different backgrounds that need to understand all of the intersections of all of their cultural, religious, ethnic data. And then we build towards a thing called a capstone, and we try to figure out, having learned all of this stuff, what's something you want to do after the course? Like last time I talked to someone, they wanted to get an EKG machine for their clinic. And how do you figure out how to explain that to the administrator? How do you build the business case? How do you put together a little pro forma, a little Excel spreadsheet that shows how the machine's going to pay for itself after so many EKGs are done, that type of thing. And then we get together again in April, and or it'll be a little bit later for you guys, but we get into the really hard stuff about communication, influencing each other, feedback, conflict, and negotiation. What's nice about this Moodle, it's called, that's an acronym for it's a learning management system. It has everything you need, all of the videos, all of the classroom articles, all of the classroom PowerPoints, and a space in order to dialogue. It gives you like a little place to get together and share. So it's a pretty effective way to do it. So that's what the website looks like. Let me say one more thing, then I'll take some questions. I need to reshare my screen now. Okay, so you should see something that says, let's look at the website, but we just did that, so I'm going to move on. So this is a set of graphs. One of my colleagues actually asked me to come to her hospital, and we did a pre-post, and this was her idea. I thought this was great. And the little diagonal words that you see here are the NCHL competencies that we talked about before. And the gray bars are what people self-rated before the course, and the blue bars were what they were like after the course. And what's important about this is not so much this, but I want to show you because these are the ones where we didn't see a lot of change, but we didn't expect to, because these are kind of things where doctors are already having some impact. But look at this. These are the ones where people said, wow, I have made bigger changes here because I've studied some new stuff that I didn't know, I knew nothing about. And so The course, again, remember, it's an inch deep and a mile wide. It's not determined to make you a CMO tomorrow. It's the first history of the world course to give you what you need to know to think about the whole leadership um, uh, area and what you might do to take the first steps. You know, the old saying is, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. You know, you have to start somewhere. Okay, so I just put some of these up here so you can see we've gotten a lot of stuff from our participants, and I couldn't put them all up here. I mean, we've had 1,500 evals at this point, but you know, I think people seem to have appreciated what we've been doing, and like I say, I'm less impressed with what people say at the end of the course than what happens later on. And what always pleases me is I was up at one of our local hospitals yesterday. I ran into two people who are graduates of this course who are now senior leaders at that hospital. And I just ran into them in the hallway. It was very delightful. I didn't plan to meet them. And you know, you can see it makes a difference. And I want to be careful. I think what I do is I light the fire for many of these people. They go on and finish the job. These people went on and got more training. But what I think the course does for people is it shows them what they need to know. And then they can become very diligent self-learners, go out and start to pursue additional training over time. So, Blaine, I think that's most of what I want to cover here. So we have a little bit of time for questions, and I'll be happy. I haven't been watching the chat box because it disappeared when I reorganized here, but let me put it back up so I can see. So where are we now?
All right. So please submit any questions you may have. We are happy to ask them aloud and have them answered here.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to. You don't write in the chat box. Just go ahead and ask. That's the best way to do it. So.
Let's see. Okay.
I suspect, you know, it's the end of a very busy clinical day. I'm not surprised if people just want to go eat dinner. I get that.
Absolutely.
So, but I mean,
absolutely.
My colleagues, what I wanted to do is I want to leave you with one thought, which is remember, we are not a commercial operation trying to sell anything. We are responding from a very generous invitation from your Arizona Medical Association leadership to do down in Arizona at least one iteration of something that's been highly successful in Washington State. We're not looking for more things to do, but we are all in the same business, and we're happy to share something that's really worked well for our region. And if it could do something, you know, in your region, that would be great. So.
Okay, we have received one question. It looks like it is, what are the costs of the program? For those of you who do not know, the cost of the program for ARMA members is just $2,250.
And there's like, Monica, how many CME credits is that for?
It's for 40 credits.
Yeah, 40 credits. So
as well as for MOC Part 2 credit.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I think is very cool, that we can meet. I don't know what your state rules are, but in Washington State, we have to have effectively 50 CME credits a year. So people that take this course knock off 80% of that all in one fell swoop, and they do it. I mean, I think it's important to also keep your clinical skills up. Don't get me wrong, but being able to focus so intensely on stuff that is affecting you every day in major ways. So.
Excellent. Well, we have received some very kind words in the chat. So thank you to both of our fearless leaders here. Thank you, Dr. Walker, for sharing all of this great information.
My pleasure.
For any of you who are in attendance, if you have any questions following tonight's session, please feel free to email me, and I will make sure to pass those questions on to our speakers to make sure to get those answered for you. Again, thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you, Dr. Walker. Thank you, Monica. I appreciate your time tonight. And we look forward to a great course.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye, guys.
Take care. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.